Imagine you pitch up to a heavy industrial site at 7 in the morning, pull out a breathalyzer, and blow a 0.05. What happens? Well, you get marched off site and sacked on the spot, don't you? No questions asked. See you later, mate. But what if you show up to that exact same shift after being awake for 17 hours straight? You get a pat on the back. You get called a champion of productivity for pulling that massive overtime shift. But biologically, your brain is in the exact same state of cognitive intoxication. See, the science on this is actually, well, it is pretty terrifying. Staying awake for 17 hours straight degrades your reaction times, your judgment, your entire cognitive toolkit to the exact equivalent of a 0.05% blood alcohol concentration. Push that to 24 hours awake, and you are rocking a 0.10. You are legally drunk behind the wheel of an 80-ton dump truck. But because there is no liquid in a glass, we call it work ethic. It is a complete double standard, and we ignore the biochemistry of it every single day. Underneath the skull, what is actually going on is a major power drain. Your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which is a mouthful, I know, but that is basically your brain's executive control center, the thing that does the heavy lifting for analytical risk assessment. It gets completely depleted of glucose when you are exhausted. Now, the brain is a greedy beast, right? It consumes a massive amount of your daily energy, so when it runs low on fuel, it does what any smart machine does. It drops cylinders. Like an old V8 engine running on absolute garbage fuel, it starts cutting corners to save power. We call this heuristic reliance. Basically, your brain swaps slow, high-effort logical thinking for fast, low-effort mental shortcuts. And the scary part? It literally tricks you into believing a dangerous shortcut is perfectly safe. At 3 a.m., the path of least resistance is the only path your brain has the energy to calculate. It is local rationality at its finest. To the tired worker, the dangerous way feels like the only way. And yet, what do organizations do to manage this? They rely on what I call the great corporate self-deception. We see it in ICAM investigations all the time. They put in a vehicle vigilance device, or they tell the crew to drink another cup of coffee, which is under the ICAM code DF09 for fatigue detection. But, that is a plaster on a gunshot wound, mate. You are trying to detect the fatigue at the very end of the line instead of looking at the systemic rosters and the ridiculous overtime patterns, the HF21 factors that biochemically poisoned the crew in the first place. You cannot prescribe coffee to fix a broken schedule. This biological drain feeds directly into what the legendary Patrick Hudson called the lethal cocktail. He had this simple, brutal formula. Violation plus error equals death. Now, when we talk about rule breaking on site, management loves to think it is a behavioral problem. They think people just wake up and decide to be reckless. But Hudson's research showed that the biggest predictor of violating behavior is simply expectation. The shared belief that rules have to be bent to get the job done under schedule pressure. Combine that with physical exhaustion, and you have got a tired brain that has a massive metabolic drive to find opportunities, to find shortcuts just to get the job done and get home to bed. But when an incident inevitably happens, what does a lazy investigation do? They stop at the active failure. They write down operator error or code IT06, procedural compliance, as if that explains anything. It drives me absolutely mental. A real, thorough systemic analysis, the kind we actually train people to do, has to map those local decisions back to the system. You have to ask why the operator made that choice. You map it back to HF21, poor shift patterns and overtime. You map it to TE01, poor task planning. And ultimately, you look at MS, the management systems that completely failed to audit actual work as done versus the clean, pretty work as imagined in the corporate office. Think about a real-world project. You're behind schedule, the client is screaming, and the crew is dead on their feet. So they make an on-the-fly fix without a formal engineering review. When operators are chronically fatigued, their hazard perception, code IT10, is completely shot. They do not even see the warning signs because their sensory gates are physically shutting down under the strain. They are not ignoring the hazard, they are literally blind to it. So, what is the fix? We have to stop scolding the player and start redesigning the game. If your system relies on workers being superhuman and never getting tired, your system is a hazard. Leaders have to stop treating fatigue as an individual discipline issue. Roster design, schedule compression, and contractor management, those are your critical risk controls. Take care of the system, and the players will take care of themselves. All right, that is it from me. Talk soon, mates.